when Amy Roloff was handed a staggering $2.1 million cashier's check from the highly publicized auction of Matt's most prized farm possessions. Absolutely everyone thought she was going to walk away rich and finally enjoy the spoils of her decades of hard work. Instead, she made a ruthless, brilliant, and completely unexpected move that secured her family's future and completely cut Matt Roloff out of the bloodline's financial control forever. This is the story of Amy's ultimate checkmate. According to explosive new insider reports and theories circulating among those closest to the family, Amy didn't just take the money and run. She masterminded a financial fortress that has left Matt absolutely speechless. Before we dive deep into this unbelievable twist of poetic justice, please take a quick second to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest shocking updates from the Roloff family. To fully understand the sheer magnitude of what Amy just pulled off, we have to rewind and look at the intense emotional warfare that has plagued the Roloff family over the last few years. For decades, Roloff Farms was more than just a piece of property in Oregon. It was a symbol of family unity, a legacy built from the ground up, and a promised inheritance for the Roloff children. Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob grew up with the understanding that one day, the soil they played on would belong to them. They poured their blood, sweat, and tears into that land, helping to build the pumpkin season empire that made Matt Roloff a wealthy man. But as we all watched unfold on national television, that dream was slowly and painfully shattered. The tension between Matt and his sons, particularly Zach and Jeremy, reached a boiling point when Matt refused to sell the farm to them at a price they could afford. Instead of keeping the legacy alive, Matt chose business over blood. He slapped a $4 million price tag on the property, effectively locking his own children out of the only home they had ever known. But it didn't stop there. Insider reports and deep-diving fan theories have long suggested that the battle over the farm came with dark, underlying threats. Whispers from those close to the production claim that Matt had allegedly leveraged the future of the grandchildren against his own kids. The narrative circulating among tight-knit reality television circles suggests that Matt made it known, either directly or indirectly, that if his sons didn't fall in line with his vision and his financial demands, the grandchildren might not see a dime of the farm's future profits. Imagine the heartbreak of Zach and Tori, or Jeremy and Audrey, hearing that their children, Jackson, Ember, Lila, and Bodie, might be completely cut out of the very legacy their fathers helped build. For Matt, control was always the ultimate prize. He controlled the land, he controlled the narrative on the show, and he seemingly wanted to control his family's financial destiny. And constantly hovering in the background of all these negotiations was Caryn Chandler, a figure who many fans and insiders believe heavily influenced Matt's increasingly cold and corporate decisions regarding the family estate. Amy watched all of this happen. She lived through the agonizing divorce, the painful division of assets, and the heartbreak of seeing her sons alienated from their father. She saw Zach pack up his family and move to Battleground, Washington, just to put physical and emotional distance between his children and Matt's toxic control. She watched Jeremy and Audrey forge their own path, buying their own farm because they realized they could never truly partner with a man who viewed them as business rivals rather than heirs. Amy saw the tears, the frustration, and the profound sense of betrayal that ripped her family apart. And while Matt was busy planning his massive new dream home with Caryn on the land that used to belong to everyone, Amy was quietly biding her time. She is a mother first and foremost, and a fiercely protective grandmother. The pain inflicted on her children and grandchildren ignited a fire in her that no one, especially Matt, saw coming. This brings us to the recent massive auction of Matt's most prized possessions. According to exclusive theories and detailed insider accounts, Matt decided to liquidate a significant portion of his assets. We are talking about high-end farm equipment, iconic memorabilia from the show, custom-built vehicles, and valuable pieces of the Roloff Farms infrastructure that he no longer needed as he downsized his operations and focused on his new life with Caryn. It was supposed to be a massive payday for Matt, a way to inject millions into his new projects. But there was a catch, a hidden tripwire buried deep within the legalities of their complex divorce settlement and business dissolution contracts. Legal experts analyzing the situation theorized that a lingering clause in their original separation agreements mandated that Amy was entitled to a massive 50% cut of the liquidation of any shared marital assets or business properties acquired during their marriage. Matt, perhaps blinded by his own ambition or poorly advised, allegedly triggered this clause by putting these specific, historically shared assets on the auction block. The day of the auction was described by insiders as a scene straight out of a Hollywood movie. The air was thick with tension. Reporters, reality TV bloggers, and wealthy collectors descended upon the property. Flashing cameras illuminated the massive tents as the auctioneer's gavel fell again and again, selling off pieces of the Roloff history to the highest bidders. Matt was there, reportedly looking smug, watching his empire turn into liquid cash. But Amy was there too, and as the final numbers were tallied, the sheer reality of the legal clause came crashing down on Matt. The total proceeds were astronomical, and a staggering $2.1 million was legally obligated to go directly to Amy Roloff. Picture the moment. The auction has wrapped up. The dust is settling on the gravel driveways of the farm. Amy is standing near the main staging area, surrounded by a swarm of curious reporters and local media who had caught wind of the dramatic financial split. A representative from the auction house, accompanied by legal counsel, approaches Amy and hands her a physical, certified cashier's check for $2.1 million. The cameras are clicking furiously. Reporters are shouting questions, asking her what she plans to do with her new fortune. Will she buy a massive mansion? Will she go on a luxury vacation? Will she invest in a new business to rival Matt's? Amy looks down at the check. It represents decades of her life, her compromises, her tears, and her endurance. But instead of flashing a greedy smile, she looks up at the reporters, her expression calm, resolute, and harder than steel. According to those present, she held the check up for the cameras, leaned into the nearest microphone, and delivered a line that sent shockwaves through the entire family. She declared with absolute certainty that she was not keeping a single dime of it for herself. She stated that this money was built on the backs of her children, and it was going to be returned to the very people Matt had tried to lock out. It was a mic drop moment that left the reporters stunned and reportedly wiped the smug smile right off Matt's face, who was watching from a distance. He realized in that instant that his liquidated empire was slipping through his fingers and falling right into the lap of the woman he thought he had outmaneuvered years ago. But a public declaration was just the beginning. Talk is cheap, and Amy knew that Matt was a master at finding legal loopholes and manipulating situations to his advantage. If she just handed the cash to Zach or Jeremy, Matt might try to leverage it, claim it as a gift, or use it to manipulate them further down the line. To truly protect this fortune, Amy had to make it untouchable. She had to build an impenetrable fortress around this $2.1 million, a financial stronghold that could withstand any legal assault from Matt or anyone else. This leads us to the twist that elevated Amy from a resilient survivor to an absolute strategic mastermind. Whispers within the community describe the events of the very next morning with intense clarity. At 9 o'clock sharp, before the local businesses had even fully woken up, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot of the Chase Bank branch in downtown Hillsboro, Oregon. Out stepped Amy Roloff, flanked not by reality TV producers or camera crews, but by her most trusted, high-powered financial attorney. She wasn't there to open a simple savings account. She was there to execute a meticulously planned legal maneuver that had been in the works the moment she realized she was legally entitled to the auction proceeds. She was there to establish the Roloff Grandchildren Education and Welfare Trust. The bank trip was swift, precise, and completely confidential, but details of the trust structure have slowly leaked out through insider channels, revealing a masterpiece of estate planning. Amy didn't just deposit the $2.1 million. She locked it away in an irrevocable trust, meaning that once the money went in, the terms could never be changed, altered, or dissolved by anyone, not even herself. The sheer brilliance of this move lies in its ironclad conditions. She named a neutral, third-party fiduciary financial institution as the trustee, ensuring that family emotions and manipulative tactics could never sway the management of the funds. The money was explicitly, legally bound to the direct benefit of her grandchildren, Jackson, Ember, Lila, Bodie, Josiah, Radley, and any future grandchildren born into the Roloff bloodline. This wasn't just a generous gift, it was a targeted strike against Matt's control. By setting up the Roloff Grandchildren Education and Welfare Trust, Amy took the power entirely out of Matt's hands. He had allegedly threatened to cut the grandchildren out of their farm inheritance, using their future as a bargaining chip against his sons. Amy took that chip, cashed it in, and locked the winnings in a vault where Matt couldn't even see the keypad, let alone guess the code. She effectively ensured that regardless of what happened to the farm, regardless of whether Matt left his estate to Caryn or sold it all to a corporate developer, the Roloff grandchildren were going to be millionaires. They were going to be completely financially secure, and it was all funded by Matt's own prized possessions. The ultimate poetic justice was that Matt's beloved tractors, his showpiece vehicles, and his carefully hoarded assets were legally liquidated and forcefully repurposed to fund the very children he had alienated. The genius of this trust goes far beyond simply securing a large sum of money for the grandchildren. To truly appreciate the absolute masterclass in estate planning that Amy pulled off, we have to look closely at the heavily guarded stipulations that exclusive insiders claim are baked into the core of the Roloff Grandchildren Education and Welfare Trust. According to these deep dive theories, Amy and her legal team anticipated every single move Matt could possibly make. They knew that if there was even a microscopic loophole, a tiny crack in the financial armor, Matt's aggressive legal team would find a way to exploit it. So, Amy made sure the principal amount of the $2.1 million was completely untouchable. And when we say untouchable, we mean an absolute 0% chance of access for anyone other than the beneficiaries under extremely specific conditions. Naturally, the very first names permanently blocked from accessing, managing, or even inquiring about the status of the trust are Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler. The paperwork is allegedly drafted with such precision that Matt cannot even request a bank statement. He is entirely locked out of the financial entity that was funded by the sale of his own beloved farm assets. But Amy's strategic brilliance didn't stop at blocking her ex-husband. In a move that truly shocked legal analysts and reality television insiders alike, the trust also completely blocks the grandchildren's own parents from touching the principal balance. Zach, Tori, Jeremy, Audrey, Molly, Jacob, and their spouses have zero legal authority to withdraw, invest, or reallocate a single penny of that $2.1 million. At first glance, some fans might wonder why Amy would restrict her own children from the money. But when you look at the toxic, manipulative family dynamics that have plagued the Roloffs, it becomes glaringly obvious that this was the most loving and protective measure she could have possibly taken. By cutting her own children out of the administrative control of the trust, Amy completely shielded them from any future emotional or financial blackmail from Matt. Think about it. If Zach or Jeremy had access to that cash, Matt could theoretically try to pressure them, demanding loans, offering twisted business partnerships, or using his remaining farm assets to manipulate their financial decisions. By legally binding their hands, Amy gave her sons the greatest gift of all, total freedom. They never have to entertain a financial conversation with their father regarding this money ever again. If Matt tries to pressure them, they can honestly look him in the eye and say they have no power to give him what he wants. Amy took the target off their backs and placed it squarely on a faceless, impenetrable financial institution. The conditions for the grandchildren to actually use the money are just as meticulously crafted. According to the insider reports, the trust is not a blank check for these kids to buy sports cars or throw lavish parties the moment they turn 18. It is an education and welfare trust, specifically designed to launch them into successful, independent adult lives. The primary mandate of the trust is to fully cover higher education. Whether Jackson wants to attend a top-tier university, Ember wants to go to a prestigious design school, or Lila wants to pursue specialized medical training, their tuition, books, and living expenses will be completely paid for. They will step into their adult lives carrying zero student loan debt, a massive advantage in today's world. But the brilliance of the trust extends even further. Once the grandchildren have completed their education, the secondary mandate of the trust kicks in: real estate. Exclusive theory suggests that the remaining funds are earmarked to provide substantial down payments or even outright cash purchases for their first homes. This detail is where the poetic justice truly reaches a breathtaking crescendo. Matt Roloff made his fortune in real estate. He bought land, built houses, and ultimately used that property to divide his family and exert dominance over his sons. He literally priced Zach and Jeremy out of their childhood home. Now, because of Amy's ultimate checkmate, the money Matt generated by liquidating his farm empire is legally forced to buy houses for the very grandchildren he allegedly used as leverage. When Jackson is handed the keys to his first house, it won't be because he had to bow down to Matt's impossible demands. It will be because his grandmother took the money his grandfather cherished and transformed it into a permanent foundation for his future. The emotional shockwave that this move sent through the Roloff family cannot be overstated. Insider sources close to Zach and Tori paint a picture of immense, overwhelming relief. For years, Zach had carried the heavy burden of the farm negotiations on his shoulders. He had wanted so desperately to provide his children with the same magical childhood he had experienced, running through the orchards and playing in the dirt of Roloff Farms. When those negotiations spectacularly collapsed and Matt chose to put a massive corporate price tag on the family legacy, Zach felt deeply betrayed. Not just for himself, but for Jackson, Lila, and Josiah. He felt like he had failed to secure their rightful inheritance. But when Amy revealed the details of the trust, that heavy burden was instantly lifted. Reports claim that Tori broke down in tears of joy and relief when she realized what her mother-in-law had done. They no longer had to worry about kissing the ring. They no longer had to endure uncomfortable holidays pretending everything was fine just to ensure their kids wouldn't be cut out of a will. Amy had fundamentally rewritten their financial destiny overnight. Jeremy and Audrey reportedly had a similar reaction. Having stepped away from the reality television spotlight to build their own brand and their own homestead, they were all too familiar with the cost of doing business with Matt. They had walked away from the farm years prior because they recognized the toxic strings attached to Matt's offers. By establishing this trust, Amy validated their decision to leave. She proved that true legacy isn't about controlling land, it's about protecting the people you love. Jeremy, who had poured years of his youth into building the pumpkin season infrastructure, finally saw a return on that sweet equity, not in his own bank account, but in the guaranteed, untouchable future of his children. Amy's move brought a profound sense of healing to her children. She proved that while Matt might hold the deed to the farm, she held the key to the family's true legacy. Meanwhile, theories circulating about the atmosphere at Matt's new sprawling estate suggest a completely different emotional landscape. For years, Matt had operated under the assumption that he was the absolute master of the board. He moved the pieces, he set the prices, and he controlled the ultimate payout. He believed that his financial dominance would always keep his family orbiting around him, even if that orbit was filled with resentment. The realization that Amy had not only legally extracted $2.1 million from his liquidation, but had weaponized that money to completely bypass his control, was allegedly a devastating blow to his ego. He couldn't spin this narrative. He couldn't go on camera and play the victim because the money was entirely dedicated to his own grandchildren. If he complained about the trust, he would look like a villain who didn't want his grandchildren's college paid for. Amy had boxed him into a corner with absolute perfection. Adding fuel to this fire are the persistent rumors surrounding Caryn Chandler's reaction to the entire ordeal. Fans and insiders have long speculated about Caryn's motivations and her influence over Matt's finances. Many believe that Caryn envisioned a future where the liquidated assets of Roloff Farms would secure a lavish, worry-free retirement for her and Matt, and perhaps even benefit her own children down the line. The reality TV gossip suggests that Caryn was entirely blindsided by the obscure legal clause that forced Matt to hand over half the auction proceeds to Amy. And when news broke that the money was locked away in a bloodline-exclusive trust, completely insulated from Matt's general estate, the frustration reportedly hit an all-time high. Caryn, who had seemingly positioned herself as the new matriarch of the farm, was starkly reminded that when it came to the ironclad legalities of the Roloff family legacy, she was standing on the outside looking in. Amy had drawn a permanent $2 million line in the sand, and neither Matt nor Caryn could cross it. As the dust finally settled over the sprawling acreage of Roloff Farms and the auction tents were dismantled and hauled away, the stark, unvarnished reality of what had just transpired began to truly sink in for Matt Roloff. According to exclusive insider theories and closely guarded production leaks, the days immediately following the establishment of the Roloff Grandchildren Education and Welfare Trust were some of the quietest, most intensely reflective, and perhaps most agonizing moments in the entire history of the property. Matt, a man who had always thrived on the deafening roar of diesel engines, the frantic hustle and bustle of pumpkin season, and the chaotic, commanding energy of constant, never-ending construction projects, was suddenly left sitting in the echoing silence of a situation he had completely orchestrated but entirely miscalculated. He had built his massive new dream house. He had shaped the land exactly to his demanding specifications. He had cleared out the old to make way for the new. But as he reportedly looked out over the farm from his pristine new porch, the view was fundamentally, permanently changed. The physical items that had once defined his grand legacy, the massive, custom-built farming equipment, the iconic props from the early golden days of Little People, Big World, the very tools he had used to carve his reality television empire out of the stubborn Oregon dirt, were completely gone. They had been shipped off to the highest bidders, scattered to the winds by the auctioneer's gavel. And the millions of dollars those precious items had generated, the absolute fortune he perhaps thought would solidify his ultimate financial reign and absolute dominance over the family hierarchy, had vanished just as quickly. But it hadn't just vanished into thin air. It had been strategically intercepted, legally captured, and permanently locked away by the one person he had consistently underestimated for decades, his ex-wife, Amy. Insiders deeply embedded in the reality television community suggest that the psychological blow of this realization was utterly staggering for the Roloff patriarch. For over 20 incredibly successful seasons of television, viewers around the globe watched Matt expertly play the role of the grand, undisputed visionary. He was the master architect, the wild dreamer, the man who could look at a muddy, barren field and instantly visualize a sprawling western town, a towering three-story treehouse, or an elaborate medieval castle. He built these incredible, fantastical structures under the noble guise of creating a magical, unparalleled childhood for Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob. But as the children grew older, got married, and began having children of their own, the underlying narrative darkly shifted. The beloved farm transitioned from a welcoming family playground into a highly contested, coldly calculated corporate asset. Matt began to treat the rich soil less like a shared ancestral home and significantly more like a brutal bargaining chip. Reports and deep-dive fan theories have long noted that he demanded absolute, unquestioning loyalty to his ever-changing vision. And when his own sons dared to assert their own independence, start their own brands, or simply ask for a fair, reasonable seat at the negotiating table, he effectively and ruthlessly shut them out. He chose the dirt over his own flesh and blood. He chose his own towering ego over the preservation and harmony of the family unit. He slapped an insurmountable corporate price tag on the memories of their youth. And now, in a twist of fate so perfectly poetic and overwhelmingly satisfying that you couldn't script it if you had a team of Hollywood writers, Amy had flipped the entire board upside down. She had taken the liquidated, monetary remains of his beloved physical empire and miraculously transformed them into an untouchable, intangible, bulletproof legacy for the exact next generation he had leveraged. Matt could no longer proudly point to a massive tractor and boast that he owned it. He couldn't aggressively point to a piece of prime real estate and hold it over his children's heads as a tool of manipulation. Amy had surgically extracted the true, lasting value of those assets and handed it directly to the grandchildren, completely and forever bypassing Matt's notorious need for control. This incredible mastermind maneuver fundamentally rewrites the entire legacy of the Roloff family in the eyes of the public and the reality TV industry. For years, the television edit often unfairly painted Amy as the pragmatic, sometimes overly cautious, and occasionally pessimistic counterweight to Matt's boundless, chaotic enthusiasm. She was frequently portrayed as the one constantly worrying about the shrinking budget, while Matt was impulsively ordering thousands of dollars worth of expensive lumber for a new, half-baked project. She was the one desperately trying to keep the house running, the kids fed, and the schedules organized, while Matt was out playing on his backhoe, chasing his next big idea. But this multi-million-dollar, ironclad chess move proves once and for all, without a shadow of a doubt, who the true, lasting visionary of the Roloff family actually is. Matt's vision was tragically limited to the physical dirt of the farm, his immediate gratification, and his insatiable need to be recognized as the boss. Amy's vision brilliantly extended generations into the future. She looked at that certified $2.1 million cashier's check and didn't see a sprawling new mansion for herself, a fleet of luxury cars, or a selfishly comfortable, lavish retirement sipping cocktails on a beach. She saw the future. She saw Jackson's prestigious college diploma proudly hanging on a wall. She saw Ember's very first mortgage entirely paid off. She saw Lila walking across a university stage to accept her degree, completely unburdened by crippling student loan debt. She saw Bodhi confidently unlocking the front door of his very own home. She saw Josiah and Radley growing up with a guaranteed financial safety net that no one could ever pull out from under them. She saw a beautiful, secure future where her precious grandchildren would never, ever have to creatively compromise their dignity, beg, or grovel to their grandfather for a meager scrap of their rightful inheritance. She meticulously built a towering financial castle out of legally binding trust documents that Matt's loudest, heaviest bulldozers could never, ever tear down. The reaction from the highly dedicated fan base and the deep-dive reality television sleuth community has been nothing short of explosive and universally triumphant. Across countless online forums, bustling comment sections, and viral social media platforms, rumors and incredibly detailed, exclusive theories about the exact stipulations of the trust have ignited an absolute firestorm of passionate support for Amy Roloff. Fans who have faithfully watched the show through its highest highs and lowest lows for over a decade are universally calling it the single greatest, most satisfying revenge arc in reality TV history. They are feverishly analyzing every past episode, pointing out all the subtle and overt moments Matt belittled Amy's crucial contributions, dismissed her valid concerns, or steamrolled over her feelings, and they are framing this brilliant financial maneuver as the ultimate, undeniable karmic payback. The sheer irony of the situation is absolutely delicious to those who have closely followed the family's turbulent, deeply emotional journey. Matt fully believed he was cleverly liquidating his past to luxuriously fund his new future with Caryn Chandler, but instead, through Amy's razor-sharp legal awareness, he accidentally funded an impenetrable fortress of immense financial security for the very children he had so coldly alienated during the farm negotiations. It is widely regarded as an absolute masterpiece of fierce maternal protection. The widely circulated fact that Matt is completely locked out of the trust, entirely unable to even peek at a monthly bank statement, direct an investment, or claim any credit for the funds, is viewed by the entire community as the absolute perfect, poetic punishment for a man who always demanded to be in absolute control of everyone else's wallet, livelihood, and destiny. As we look toward the unwritten future of the Roloff family, the establishment of the Roloff Grandchildren Education and Welfare Trust fundamentally and permanently changes the family dynamic forever. The incredibly heavy, dark, suffocating cloud of the farm inheritance that has aggressively hovered over Zach, Tori, Jeremy, and Audrey for the past several years has finally, gloriously evaporated into thin air. Insider sources report that they can finally breathe easily, sleeping soundly at night with the absolute, guaranteed knowledge that their children are fiercely and legally protected by their grandmother's unparalleled strategic brilliance. They can boldly continue to build their own independent lives, grow their own successful brands, and cultivate their own beautiful homesteads without the lingering, toxic anxiety of what manipulative games Matt might try to play with his sprawling estate in the future. By locking away that $2.1 million, Amy has granted her sons and daughters-in-law the ultimate priceless gift: absolute freedom. The freedom to walk away from the toxicity, the freedom to set firm boundaries, and the freedom to live their lives without leaving their children's rightful, massive legacy behind on the negotiation table. She bravely took the hardest, most agonizingly painful chapters of her very public divorce: the deep betrayal, the heartbreaking division of the beloved farm, the excruciating public humiliation of watching her ex-husband move on with a former employee. And she miraculously transmuted all of that deep pain into pure, unadulterated, unstoppable power. She didn't just quietly survive the devastating fallout of her long marriage. She spectacularly emerged from the ashes as the undisputed, triumphant, and fiercely protective matriarch of the entire Roloff bloodline. So, what exactly happens next for Matt Roloff as he sits on his newly acquired pile of cash that is now significantly lighter than he anticipated? He is left with his excessively big house, his new, highly scrutinized life with Caryn Chandler, and the incredibly echoing, inescapable realization that his ultimate, lasting legacy in this world will not be the physical wooden structures he built on the Oregon farm, the pumpkins he grew, or the tractors he drove. His true legacy will forever be overshadowed by the multi-million-dollar, ironclad trust fund his supposedly pragmatic ex-wife brilliantly engineered right under his nose, using his own prized possessions to fund it. As he is forced to watch from a distance, the financial remains of his once great empire are being seamlessly, legally handed down to the next generation, completely and utterly without his input, his signature, or his notorious control. He may technically own the dirt beneath his feet, but Amy undeniably owns the future of the family. Now, we have to turn it over to you, the viewers, the dedicated fans who have followed every twist and turn of this incredible family saga. What do you think of this absolutely legendary, jaw-dropping power play? Did Amy just pull off the greatest, most heartwarming, and strategically brilliant revenge in the entire history of reality television? We absolutely need to hear your thoughts on this masterpiece of poetic justice. Drop a massive, roaring Queen Amy in the comments down below if you absolutely love what she did for the grandchildren and how she definitively outsmarted Matt once and for all. If this story of ultimate vindication made you smile, please make sure to smash that like button, share this video with all your fellow little people, big world fans, and hit that subscribe button with the notification bell turned on so you never miss out on our exclusive theories, insider reports, and massive deep dives into the hidden truths of your favorite reality television families. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep watching closely, keep theorizing wildly, and always remember that sometimes the most silent, calculated moves make the absolute loudest, most earth-shattering impact.